Hello, welcome to the More for Scotland's Animal Welfare Hustings. Absolutely delighted to be here. I'm Bob Elliott. I'm the director for OneKind, an animal welfare charity based in Edinburgh, campaigning for the advancement of animal welfare in Scotland. I'm also here on behalf of the More for Scotland's Animals Coalition. That's 11 organisations who have come together to raise the profile of animal welfare as a key issue for the next Scottish Parliament. Also securing pledges from candidate MSPs. But we haven't got much time. We've only got an hour. We probably could have run this for 3 if we tried. But I'd like to introduce, without further ado, our chair for tonight, Kirsteen Campbell. Kirsteen is the Chief Executive for the Scottish SPCA and the Scottish Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, does loads of rescue work, rehoming, prevention work, and inspires people to do more for Scotland's animals. So over to you, Kirsteen, to get things underway.
Thank you very much, Bob. I am delighted to add my own welcome to our candidates and all those joining this evening. I think we have almost 300 people with us this evening, so thank you so much for coming along. There is no doubt that Scotland is progressive when it comes to animal welfare, and the next Scottish Parliament has the opportunity to go even further. So we will first of all hear briefly from each of the candidates to set out their animal welfare commitments, and then we'll dive straight into questions. So without further ado, I'm delighted to do that, and in no particular order, we'll first of all welcome views from Alison Johnstone, please, of the Scottish Green Party.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to join everyone this evening, because I think we have a real commitment and an opportunity here to do more to progress animal welfare in Scotland. This is wholly devolved, and there's a great deal more still to be done. Obviously, as a Scottish Green, I'm very proud of the work we've done in this session, in particular our work with P&O on the issue of animal exports, live animal exports. Still much more to be done there with regards to the protection of the beaver and, of course, protected status for our mountain hare. But in this session of Parliament, we would like to see an end to driven grouse shooting, a real ban on fox hunting. We'd like to ban farrow crates. We want an end to factory farming and the abolition of all battery systems. We'd like a ban on tail docking. We want smaller abattoirs, absolutely as close as possible to the animals. No to fur farming. We want an end to animals in entertainment, and we want an end to greyhound racing. Obviously, we're highly concerned about what we're seeing during the pandemic. We welcome very much the fact that more and more people are engaging with animals, but we have concerns too about the welfare implications of that, in particular with regards to breeding and, of course, the implications for centres like yourselves, Kirsteen. We want a moratorium on the expansion of salmon farming in Scotland. We want far tighter regulation. We would like to see a significant reduction in stocking density. And we want a ban on the culling of male chicks in the egg industry. I'm coming near the end of my minute, but I just want to ask people to please have a look at our manifesto. We have a chunky section there on protecting Scotland's animals. And I think it's the first time a serious political party have given such focus to animal welfare in a manifesto. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alison, and I did see that today, thank you. What I forgot to say was there is a Q&A function in the chat box, so if anyone would like to ask some questions, then please do use that. I also see that Maurice Golden, I think, is having problems to connect, so hopefully he will be with us very shortly. So thank you so much, and I'm now delighted to welcome next Ben Macpherson of the Scottish National Party. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, and a very good evening, everyone. And like all of us in attendance tonight, I'm very passionate about animal welfare. On a personal level, I've been a vegetarian all of my life, so it's great to be with you, and I have been glad to sign the pledge as well. And of course, the SNP takes the issue of animal welfare very seriously, and we have delivered a number of improvements to animal welfare in recent years. For example, the Animals and Welfare Scotland Act 2020 increased the available penalties for the most serious offences against kept animals and wildlife. legislation for a modern licensing system of dog, cat and rabbit breeders, pet sellers, animal sanctuaries and animal rehoming activities was approved by the Scottish Parliament in February. And the regulations also end the third-party sale of puppies and kittens. From the 1st of July, CCTV coverage will be mandatory for all areas where live animals are present. And we have committed to a ban on live exports of animals for fattening and slaughter out with the UK, and to only allow the live transport of livestock from the islands in Scotland to the mainland with stringent welfare standards in place. We remain committed to closing the loopholes in protecting foxes and other wild mammals and implementing the licensing of driven grouse shooting. So those are previous commitments that we made, and we're still very strongly committed to doing those. And these have only, well, with regard to fox control, were only delayed because of COVID. What's more, in our manifesto, which of course was launched today, we have committed to a number of further policies to enhance animal welfare, including shifting to entirely free-range woodland or barn chicken and egg production, the creation of a new Scottish veterinary service to make sure that we have the personnel in order to maintain high standards of animal welfare, and to double the amount of land used for our organic farming. So there's more I could say, but I look forward to your questions. I think we have a strong record in the SNP on animal welfare, but we're determined to do more. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And now, please, I'm delighted to welcome Colin Smyth of Scottish Labour.
Thank you very much, Kirsten, and good evening, everyone. Can I start by saying a massive thank you to all the groups involved in the More for Scotland coalition who have come together, not only to host tonight's event, but also for the amazing work that you do. I mean, we know that animals don't have a vote in this election, but they do have a voice thanks to the work that you're doing, and that voice really does need to be heard in the next Parliament. And I can say to all the supporters of all the groups, it was largely due to the work of those groups that we did see some progress over the last 5 years on animal welfare and wildlife crime, such as the tougher sentences. But we've also sadly seen a number of setbacks, the reintroduction of tail docking, for example, and also the failure to see through promises such as a proper ban on hunting. So there really is very much a lot of unfinished business still to be done. You know, Labour believes strongly that we do need a full review of what are now quite outdated animal legislation, animal welfare legislation, and a number of changes that we would like to see, including, for example, a proper ban on hunting, a ban on snares, and the use of electric shock collars. But I think, and I appreciate we've got a very short time, the one crucial thing that I believe is important in the next Parliament is a recognition by government of that basic principle that all animals are sentient, and that should be recognised when government right across departments are formulating and implementing policy. And having that principle at the heart of government is a real crucial aim of Labour in the next Parliament.
Thank you very much for that. And now I'm delighted to welcome, representing the Scottish Liberal Democrats, Molly Nolan.
Thank you, Christine, and hello, everyone. It's lovely to be here this evening. My name is Molly Nolan. I'm the Scottish Liberal Democrat candidate for Caithness, Sutherland and Ross, and I'm also the party spokesperson for environment, climate change and land reform. I'm really proud of our record supporting animal welfare in Scotland, and in this election, Scottish Liberal Democrats are asking voters to put recovery first, and that includes for Scottish animals and wildlife. We support the highest standards of animal welfare, and if elected, we will propose a nature recovery law to set targets across government to clean up our air, our waters, our soils, our rivers, and protect our wild animals as well. We would also declare a nature emergency to tackle the loss of species in Scotland, which is becoming very serious. We would guarantee sufficient resources for the police wildlife crime investigation unit, and we believe this is particularly important in our rural areas. And we would take forward reform of the wild mammals legislation in order to protect animals and also make sure that we're meeting the needs of rural communities. On the domestic front, Liberal Democrats believe that we should be keeping pace with EU animal welfare standards at a minimum. And so we will clamp down on illegal pet imports and also maintain the protection of standards for all animals. This is a really important topic. I'm very grateful to be here, and it's great to have so many groups and people involved in this tonight. So I'm very much looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. And now, finally, delighted to welcome Maurice Golden from the Scottish Conservative Party.
Thanks, Kirstine. The Scottish Conservatives stand for the highest standards in animal welfare. We are proud of our campaign to deliver Finn's Law in the last Parliament, giving proper protection to service animals like police dogs. We will continue to work with other parties across the Scottish Parliament to strengthen protections for animals in Scotland by bringing forward a new animal welfare bill. As a result of the lockdown, the demand for pets is at an all-time high. Less scrupulous sellers will see this as an opportunity, and pet theft has also increased. It is unfortunately likely that we will see many animals not receiving the attention they deserve, being mistreated or abandoned when restrictions are lifted and normal life resumes. Vigilance on the part of lawmakers towards the treatment of domesticated animals will be more important than it ever has been. While ear cropping dogs has been made illegal across the UK, it is still possible for dogs to have their ears cropped abroad and then brought to this country for sale. As part of the Animal Welfare Bill, we would ban the sale of dogs with cropped ears in Scotland. We would follow Wales in banning the use of electric shock collars, and we would amend the Dangerous Dogs Act so that dogs are not automatically put down due to their breed. We'd introduced a nature bill aimed at reducing the threat of species extinction, expanding green spaces in towns and cities, and protecting marine life. The current biodiversity indicators reveal a woeful track record, with 1 in 9 species in Scotland at risk, and we would want to work with all parties to tackle the biodiversity crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. It's thank you all. It's really great to hear everyone from every party commit to action on so many of the most pressing animal welfare issues. And it'll be great to hear your responses to some of the questions that are coming in thick and fast. Actually, I'm just trying to keep up with my phone buzzing away with all these wonderful questions. So let's get straight to them, shall we? And in the interest of time, if I could ask for quite brief responses if possible, please, because they are coming in thick and fast. And to get us going, I was going to talk about the issue of animal sentience, which has been mentioned already this evening. So as you know, the UK government's committed to recognising animal sentience in law, and that was temporarily lost due to Brexit. Would your party be keen to introduce similar legislation? And I might go to Colin Smyth first, because actually, Colin, you've answered that question.
I have, and the answer is very much yes, Kirsten. It's something that when the Scottish Parliament were passing legislation to manage the impact of Brexit, that myself and other members actually brought forward amendments to recognise that very point. And I think it should be at the heart of policy making. But it's more about just having that line, if you like, in legislation. It's obviously about making sure that every time government are formulating and implementing policy, then they are effectively steered by that basic principle. So it's about, yes, making sure it's in law, but crucially making sure that that law is properly practiced.
Thank you very much. And could I ask for your views on that, please, Molly, Nolan?
Absolutely. Well, Liberal Democrats have been clear that we will keep pace with EU legislation as far as possible, and that includes animal sentience. So it is our party policy to reaffirm that animals are sentient beings, and if that does come to a vote in the Scottish Parliament, I'm sure we will follow that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And your thoughts, please, Maurice Golden, on animal sentience?
Yes, definitely, but it has to be part of a package of measures to deliver better animal welfare standards in Scotland, and that's the part that is often missed. It would be my reflections from 5 years in Parliament. We often pass legislation, then forget about the delivery of it, and that would be my key ask, that we need, 1, to recognise, but 2, to follow that up with action.
Thank you very much. And your thoughts on sentience, please, Alison Johnstone?
Yeah, I mean, we have to recognise this fully and urgently. The fact that animals are classified as goods under the Treaty of Rome, I think it's resulted in the position we're in at the moment. So imagine if you recognise fully that animals are sentient beings, then you would instantly, would you not, ban glue traps? You would instantly ban snaring. You would change so much poor practice overnight if you got away from the idea that an animal was simply a good, or that, you know, it was a product and all you were interested in, it was what you could derive from it. So I think this has to be at the heart of everything that we seek to do together. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And those are topics that will be coming up later this evening, I'm quite sure. And Ben Macpherson, your views, please, on animal sentience.
Thank you. Other panelists and those listening in will probably be aware that the Scottish Animal Welfare Commission, which does remarkable work, published a statement on animal sentience on the 10th of February. And the Scottish Government has been continuing to consider that statement and other appropriate scientific evidence towards what that definition would be in due course. So there is a commitment to undertaking what needs to be done to make sure that considerations around sentience are legislative, but it's what is included in that definition is an important process that we need to go through together. And also, just from a legislative point of view, the UK government are planning to bring forward an animal welfare bill at Westminster. So in order to do things expediently, there is dialogue between the Scottish and the UK government on how much could be included in their bill that we'd be able to utilise in Scotland. And this is one of the issues where there's constructive engagement between the UK and the Scottish government on the issue.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I might move on to our next question, which also touches on Westminster, and it's on the topic of greyhound racing. And it's a question from Jill, who's with us this evening. And she's saying that you'll be aware of the successful Westminster e-petition calling for a phased ban on greyhound racing. Given the reports of abuse and cruelty within the industry in Scotland, would you consider calling for a ban on greyhound racing? And I'll direct that question first of all to Maurice Golden, please.
Well, I think the first thing to look at is if there's been acts of criminality, then these must be prosecuted, and we must take an evidence-based approach. I wouldn't, as an outright statement, say we want to either ban greyhound racing or ban horse racing. That's not a position that I would take, but any aspects of animal cruelty should be followed up and the individuals punished.
Thank you very much. And your thoughts on that, Ben Macpherson, please?
Yeah, I think it's actually an issue that I've dealt with at a constituency basis, because there's real concerns about dog racing and dogs that are held at Seafield, just on the edge of my constituency. And I've been engaged with Edinburgh Council on how making sure that there's robust prosecution of any criminal activity there. I do think, although it's not in our manifesto, I do think this will be a point of consideration for the Parliament in the next term, dog racing, because there are a frequency of concerning reports and instances coming out about, and I think we'll need to look very seriously at it, and also the potential engagement of organised crime within it. So I do think as a Parliament we need to look at it very seriously in the next session.
Absolutely, thank you. And your thoughts on greyhound racing, Colin Smyth, please.
Yeah, thanks very much, Kirsten. And can I just thank Jill for all the work that she's been doing on this particular issue, trying our best to raise awareness of an issue that hasn't, frankly, been given enough, I think, political thought up until now. I mean, personally, I do support a ban on greyhound racing. I recognise there are some people who argue that it's so few in number now that it's almost dying out. But the reality is there are so many issues, from organised crime to the way in which the greyhounds are treated, that frankly we need to make sure that it is a sport that no longer continues as soon as possible. I think there are also wider issues that need to be considered as well, that won't certainly be solved by a ban. That the lack of transparency, for example, around what happens to greyhounds after they're no longer fit for racing, means that we hear a lot of cases where healthy animals are being needlessly destroyed, and so we need to ensure that retired animals are also being properly cared of as well. And I think having, for example, proper databases around what happens to greyhounds after they no longer race is one step forward. So it is, yeah, absolutely about pushing this so-called sport to an end, but also making sure that we look after those animals that are no longer racing at the moment. And a lot of big issues.
Absolutely, no, that certainly is a big issue. Thank you very much. And your thoughts on greyhound racing, please, Molly Nolan.
I think it's a very serious issue. The Liberal Democrats have previously raised this within policy meetings, and what's come out of it is that we'd like to see far higher standards for welfare, certainly in an interim. And if further legislation was to come, I'm sure that it would be looked at very closely. But the instances of particularly broken bones and animals having to be put down as a result of that is very, very distressing. So I think it is something that needs to be looked at very closely and quite urgently.
Thank you very much. And then finally, Alison Johnstone, I know you have views on greyhound racing, so I will just over to you, please, for your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm pleased we're discussing this, and I think that's in no small part to those campaigners who have rightly been very vocal on this issue. If you go to Protecting Scotland's Animals in our manifesto, you will see that we have a commitment to ban the breeding, import and export of dogs for racing, ending greyhound racing in Scotland. We know that these dogs can suffer isolated confinement, that we have cases where they've been forced to ingest Class A substances, that some 10,000 are deemed surplus every year in the UK, and many are abandoned, killed. It really is an industry that it's, we have to get to grips with the seriousness of this situation, and I don't believe there's any need for it. And I'm just, very pleased that we're discussing it, and I hope we start to see some changes within the next session of the Scottish Parliament.
Very much indeed. And now moving on to another topic around driven grouse shooting. A question here from Mark. Do candidates believe that driven grouse shooting can continue in some form, or should there be a ban? And I may direct that question first of all to Ben Macpherson, please.
Well, we remain committed to what my predecessor, Maurice stated in the Parliament in November, of bringing in a licensing regime and to make sure that any serious breaches of any codes of practice by any businesses engaged in the sport would have their license withdrawn. It will require primary legislation to bring in what's been put forward by the previous Scottish Government and in the Werrity Review. So there will be a bill process on this, and certainly, we really need to undertake the licensing of grouse moor management and make sure that that is effective and robust.
Thank you very much. And your thoughts on driven grouse shooting, Molly Nolan, please.
Absolutely. So a licensing scheme for driven grouse shooting was something that the Liberal Democrat Conference called for before it was brought into the Scottish Parliament, and we retain that position. I think the key for us is that any licensing scheme has to be very transparent, it has to be evidence-led, and it has to have input from all relevant stakeholders. So we'd like to see that process move forward in the Scottish Parliament, and we'd like everyone everyone involved in that process to have their say, so we can get it right.
Thank you very much. And your thoughts on that, please, Colin Smyth.
Thanks, Kirsten. I mean, I think it's a scandal that tens of thousands of wild animals are still being killed on Scotland's grouse moors every year. I think we need to go further than the Werrity report proposes. So yes, we'll support a comprehensive licensing of grouse moors, and hopefully we'll see that happen as soon as possible. It needs to have robust criteria to end the unsustainable practice of driven grouse moors. And I think just overall to promote the sustainable development of our uplands a lot more than they are. There's a huge, frankly, waste of wildlife and animals. There's also a poor use of our land as a result of the use of grouse moors. So we do need to go, I think, further than the Werrity report, and hopefully we will see progress in legislation early in the Parliament.
Thank you very much. And your thoughts, please, Alison Johnstone.
Yeah, we want to ban driven grouse moors. I mean, the Scottish Green Party is wholly opposed to blood sports. We see no justification for animals suffering and being killed for pleasure, and therefore support a ban on driven grouse shooting. I mean, apart from anything else, this so-called sport uses 12 to 18% of upland Scotland, and it's non-productive, it's not efficient. We know that almost any other use would be better for the people that live there in terms of, you know, meaningful jobs and so on. In terms of climate, it is not good at all. And also, in order to, you know, carry out this activity, we see stink pits, we see snares. I mean, it's just such poor practice on every level, and I cannot wait till we move to a situation to ban it. I mean, at the very moment, you know, at the very least, we need a rigorous licensing system as a matter of urgency, but that, in my view, does not go far enough.
Thank you very much. And finally, your thoughts on that, please, Maurice Bolton.
Thank you. I think that grouse moor shooting is part of how we manage our land in rural areas. It's a fulcrum for many jobs in the rural economy, and it helps ultimately to do a host of other land management activities, such as promoting biodiversity. I also support the shared approach to wildlife management concordat, which sets out a range of organisations across Scotland working together to establish healthy and valued populations of wildlife. And I think we need to ensure that in this debate, we always take an evidence-based approach to how we manage our land and how we manage our animals.
Thank you. You're certainly getting some notes on an evidence-based approach. Thank you very much, everybody. So now moving on, another very popular topic is one of snaring, which many feel have absolutely no place in a modern society. Trying to find the actual question. Never mind. Yes. The question from Tony is, what would the justification be when the use of snares is banned across much of the EU for Scotland lagging behind? And it's a very indiscriminate method of animal control. So what would the view be of your party on banning snaring? And I'll direct that first of all to Molly Nolan, please.
Thanks, Kirstine. We passed a motion in 2013 that declared we would ban snaring outright. It causes far too much suffering for animals.
Thank you very much. And Alison, your thoughts on snaring? I think you gave them earlier.
Yeah, I mean, a ban on snaring is long overdue. It would be great to see the Scottish Government take action on this, but they are lagging behind. We shouldn't have to wait for Westminster to act on live exports on farrowing crates. And I think it would be, you know, fabulous if we were proactive in this. They are totally indiscriminate. You know, your pet cat or dog could just as easily be killed as some so-called target species. It really is time for a ban. Thank
you very much. And your thoughts on that, Colin?
Thanks, Kirsten. Yeah, I mean, I brought a members' debate on this. I think it was in May 2017. It was the first time that Parliament had debated the issue for 6 years. I hope it's not another 6 years after that debate before we debate the issue again, because I'm absolutely clear that there's no justification for the use of snares. It will be a Labour Party commitment or manifesto when it's published on Monday to ban snaring. They are indiscriminate. They impact on all types of animals, and I think the government's last review carried out by SNH didn't go further. I think OneKind described it as destined to fail, and I think they're right, and I think we do need to ban.
Thank you very much. And your thoughts on that, please, Maurice?
Thanks, Kirstine. The use of traps and snares to manage wildlife on grouse moors and elsewhere in Scotland are necessary land management tools which effectively control generalist predators. The Animal and Wildlife Act of 2020 contains several new provisions designed to deter or confront illegality and recklessness with respect to trapping and snaring. These practices are critically important in maintaining balanced ecosystems. Generalist predators pose a significant threat to wildlife, especially ground nesting birds, and with no apex predators to keep them in check, the responsibility falls to land managers to keep them under control. Traps and snares constitute a key part of that effort. and to maintain their operation is critical.
Thank you very much. And final word to Ben, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we recognise the animal welfare concerns about trapping and snaring, and we accept the need for greater regulation of the use of traps and land management purposes, and we will introduce tighter regulations governing the use of traps on grouse moors as part of the licensing proposals in that area, which we spoke about in the last question. There is another review of snaring upcoming, and that'll be an important time to consider these matters again. And of course, the Scottish Animal Welfare Commission has also published evidence in just the recent weeks on glue traps as well. So we need to keep considering all of these matters and their concerns. And like I said, the SNP is committed to introduce tighter regulations governing the use of these on grouse moors as part of the licensing proposals talked about earlier.
Thank you very much. Moving on to our next question, and that is around caged farming. And the question from Arnie is, what are your different party policies around caged farming and bringing that to an end? And I'll go to Alison first, please. Thank you.
Sorry, just seeking to unmute myself there. Yeah, yeah. We want to see, a ban, an end on such intensive farming, and we want to ban farrow crates. We want to end factory farming. We'd like to see the promotion of alternative animal production systems and a move away from the industrial systems that are causing, well, just really cruelty and aren't, terribly effective in terms of preventing disease, and are so reliant on antibiotics. And we're seeing, deformed animals and animals who, while they have a short life, it is, a shockingly uncomfortable life. So I'd like to see a real move in the other direction. And as someone who has visited intensive farms and organic farms, I'm always struck by the huge difference there is in animal welfare in terms of the animal being able to express itself. It can actually behave in a way that is far more natural than those I've seen where cage systems exist. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Maurice, your thoughts on caged farming, please?
Yeah, I think we should be moving away from caged farming. We also, if we're doing that, need to ensure that we don't then import caged animals from abroad. And therefore, one of the ways we could do that is by improving labelling on all foods to help. But yes, the future for not just Scotland, but UK and the world should be moving away from caged battery farming of animals.
Thank you very much. And interested in your views as well, please, Ben.
Sorry. No, absolutely. Like I said in my opening remarks, we are committing in this election to shifting to entirely free-range woodland or barn chicken and egg production, and also to double the amount of land used for organic farming. And we will also seek to reflect, so far as we can, new EU animal welfare labelling to promote food produced to higher than EU welfare standards to help consumers. Because I think the point that Maurice made around making sure that we're not just importing products that are made to a lesser standard of animal welfare is something that we always need to bear in mind. So some strong commitments there and shared with others.
Thank you very much. And your thoughts on that, Colin?
Yeah, I mean, we do need to move away from some of these practices, and support a number of the proposals around banning some of these practices. One of the things I think there's an opportunity to do is we'd start to develop the alternative farming support mechanisms that we're being forced to do, if we're being honest, as a result of Brexit and coming out of the common agricultural policy. We need to better support those farmers that pursue the types of practices that will improve animal welfare. And there's a real opportunity to move some of that significant funding that does go to agriculture towards promoting those practices. You know, farmers, for example, who allow calf to spend more time with their mother. These types of particular practices, I think, deserve an awful lot more support. And I think if we do that, then we'll make a huge inroads into getting rid of some of this industrial type agricultural mechanisms in our farms, and actually better reward those that are prepared to take the extra steps around animal welfare.
Thank you very much. And final thoughts from yourself, Molly, on this issue? Thank you.
Well, at the UK level, Liberal Democrats have supported calls to ban intensive farming. But I think, as has been raised already, imports are also a really big issue in this area. So it's regrettable that you know, standards have been voted to be lower than they were. And I think one thing that Scottish Liberal Democrats are very keen on is looking at a Made in Scotland standard for labelling, so that we can ensure that we are, you know, ethical consumers and taking part in high levels of farming welfare.
Thank you all very much. And we have had some questions on labelling, but it's great that so many of you have been answering about labelling, so I won't come to that question, but thank you very much. So I may move on now to a different type of question, which is around dogs. There'll be no surprise around that. And a question here from Andy saying, around our recent survey of veterinary surgeons identified exaggerated body shape in pedigree dog breeds as one of the top 2 issues that they have around animal welfare concerns. What do you think could be done to address this problem? What might your party do to address this problem? And I might come to you first, Maurice Golden, if that's okay. Thank you.
For sure. With designer breeds on the rise and thousands more poorly bred puppies hitting the UK market, we're seeing, as the questioner identified, more overbreeding in the rush to meet the growing demand. And with that, we're seeing an increase in complex health issues for dogs. Breeds like pugs and the French bulldogs are popular pets, loved by many owners, but they're a classic example of often irresponsible and selective breeding. Over the years, breeders have chosen the flattest faced dogs in the litter to breed, and this has created traits that are dangerous and extremely damaging to dogs' health. Many French bulldogs and pugs now have an airway that's so narrow, it'd be the equivalent to humans breathing through a drinking straw. The corrective surgery, which is available, massively improves the quality of life, but it's risky. It's an invasive operation, and recovery can be very complicated. I welcome the new legal protections under the animal welfare regulations, but requiring licensed breeders to account for genetic health when breeding dogs. And I believe this should be extended to all breeders, so that as far as we can, we begin to help those dogs and steer everyone away, anyone who's breeding, from ensuring that those extreme features do not harm the animal welfare of our pets.
Thank you very much. And your thoughts on that aspect of dog breeding, Colin Smyth, please.
Thanks, Kirsten. Yeah, I mean, there has been some progress around some of the legislation last year around numbers being allowed to breed, and certainly a tightening. But we still, we still see the horror of animals being bred. For example, their flat faces, and I just think we have to move to a ban, a comprehensive ban on that. I mean, we appreciate there's a huge market out there, and we need to stop providing and feeding that market. And so I would like to see a proper ban on these conditions, because we know, and the growing evidence of the harmful health conditions that this is causing, and it's it's almost the new challenge that we're now having to tackle.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you very much. And your thoughts on that, Molly, please.
Thank you. I mean, I think this is a really awful issue. And one thing that is very important to Liberal Democrats is thinking about demand. So obviously during the pandemic, demand for pets has really, really risen. So one thing we would support is the licensing of puppy breeders to make sure that unlicensed breeders cannot be selling animals online, and that the process is very, very regulated and transparent so that we can prevent issues like this from continuing.
Thank you very much. And Alison, Johnson, your thoughts on this topic, please?
I think if we get back to that basic premise that a dog is a sentient being, then its sale, its breeding, its sale, everything should be transparent. You know, there should be a pathway that you can follow to understand where this animal came from in the first instance. I think the intervention by vets is really welcome because they understand the pain that these animals are living with. We have to get away from this situation. When I was speaking about tonight's event with a neighbour, I was just reflecting on the fact that when I grew up, nobody had a so-called pedigree dog. We just had dogs. My own dogs growing up were from the Cat and Dog Home in Edinburgh and from the SPCA. And I'd really like to see more education so that people understand that when they're buying one of these dogs, they are contributing to cruelty. Now, they're doing that unintentionally. So you need to make sure that people really get what they're buying into. So I think we do need a big education campaign. You know, we need to see these poor dogs on the side of buses and just make people understand this is something we need to be moving away from. And of course, a rehoming campaign for those animals who are already in shelters, who are so deserving of you know, life as a companion.
Yes, well, I'm certainly all for that, but then I have to declare bias on the rehoming of animals. And final thoughts from yourself, please, Ben Macpherson.
Yeah, I agree with what a lot of the other panelists have said, and I think first of all, the point that was made lastly there around public education, around where dogs are being sourced from and pets are being sourced from generally, that was part of a campaign that was ongoing, that was paused due to the election period, but there are intentions to ramp that campaign up again after the election. And I think also what I talked about in terms of the 2020 Act and the secondary legislation as a result of that, the action that's already been taken around the end of third-party sale of puppies and kittens, that will make a difference in the wider question of where people are sourcing their pets from. And there's plenty scope within the Act that's already been passed to utilise secondary legislation in the next Parliament if issues like the one the questioners raised continue to either pertain as a problem or get worse. So I think there's real consensus here to continue to take action on the sale of pets and to make sure that that's done appropriately and humanely.
Thank you very much. Absolutely right. And on that, we've had quite a few questions on this, and on the very related subject, there has been lots of great progress in legislation and licensing. And I have a question here from Mike saying that while welcoming the new licensing regulations, dog breeders who breed 3 or more litters a year fall within these new regulations. Would parties commit to regulating the breeding of all puppies? And I might direct that to Colin Smyth first, please.
It's a very good point, because we did see a progress in terms of reducing that number in previous legislation. I think we'll have to see what the impact of that would be, but I personally, it's not in our manifesto, but personally it's something I'm very much sympathetic towards, and I'm keen to hear what the impact of the changes that have been made so far are actually having.
Thank you very much. And your thoughts on that, please, Ben Macpherson.
Yeah, similarly, I think we need to see how the current system works, and what impact it has. Where to draw the line, so to speak, is always a challenge in these regulatory arrangements, because obviously we don't want to overly burden people who just happen to have pets that then produce offspring. So it's just, where do we get that balance right? And I think politicians cross-party, working with all the organisations involved in organising tonight's hustings and beyond, will continue to monitor that, and collectively as a parliament, I'm sure we'll get it right.
Yeah, thank you very much. And your thoughts on that, please, Maurice?
Yes, I said that in my kind of last answer, that should be extended
Yes.
to all breeders. And, you know, regarding anyone, you know, getting caught out, well, you know, it's quite easy to ensure that your puppy doesn't get pregnant. I'm sure we all know how we can do that. So just keep an eye when they're out on a walk, especially. So, you know, I'm a bit more relaxed perhaps than the other panelists about extending it to all breeders.
Thank you very much. And your thoughts, please, Molly Nolan.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with what is said, and I would also say that I don't think there's. I think it's quite easy to draw a distinction between, you know, a case where someone's clearly not a professional breeder and someone that is, and I think that's where we'd be looking to possibly make the difference. But yeah, we would like to see regulation, and I think transparency is the number one thing for us.
Thank you very much. And a final word on this, please, Alison Johnson.
Yeah, I think I'm quite open-minded about understanding what is going on across the country, and I think a license, you know, it just seems fairly sensible to me, because then we understand and we've got better data, we can see what's happening, and you know, I think most reasonable people would be, I would be, you know, quite open to that. I think it makes really good sense on an animal welfare, yeah, from an animal welfare point of view, and also just helping us understand what's going on with populations and why we're seeing the numbers that we are seeing in rescue centres and so on. Because every time an animal breeds, there are several homes that are then required. So I think it's, you know, it seems pretty sensible to me and reasonable.
Great, thank you very much. And now moving topic completely to the subject of salmon farming and fish welfare. So we have a question here around fish not having real protections in legislation at the time of killing, potentially leading to vulnerability and suffering in their final moments. Would you, or how would you intend to put in place welfare at time of killing regulations for fish and aquatic animals? And I direct that question to Ben Macpherson first, please.
Thank you. Like many others, I saw the work that was done by Compassionate World Farming and Animal Equality UK on this, and was quite disturbed by the footage, to be honest. But we emphatically expect all producers to comply with the current animal welfare legislation and any breaches to be fully investigated by the Animal and Plant Health Agency, and that needs to be undertaken. It's also, I think, important to point out that new legislation came into force on the 29th of March, which is related to a topic that is also of concern at the moment around sea lice in farmed salmon as well, and that will require mandatory reporting of sea lice numbers on a weekly basis to help us get a better understanding of the impact on the health and welfare of farmed salmon. So, you know, what we need to make sure at the moment is robust enforcement of the current legislation, but I do think we need to continually keep under consideration the welfare of farmed salmon, and I think it's good that different organisations are bringing focus to this matter at present.
Thank you very much. It's certainly very much in focus at the moment. And could I ask for your thoughts on that, please, Molly Nolan?
So, I mean, I live in a rural constituency that has a lot of salmon farming going on. So it's something that I tackle a lot at a constituency level. But I mean, Liberal Democrats know that the status quo is not an option here. We've all seen the issues that have been faced. And I would say that regulation here is not just beneficial for the animals themselves, for the fish, it's also beneficial for consumers and for the industry itself. So I think that there's no real downside here to closer regulation. And in the interest of maintaining Scotland's sort of, you know, reputation for high quality produce, it's something that we would absolutely be getting behind.
Thank you very much. And your thoughts on that, please, Alison Johnson?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say salmon farming has it's receiving increasing attention, and probably for a lot of reasons that are very concerning to us all. Sometimes it seems to me that we've got a perfect combination here of an environmental crisis and an animal welfare crisis. So we'd like to see a significant reduction in stocking densities. We'd like to see an end to thermolyser treatments. You know, we have seen some hideous footage of the condition that salmon find themselves in, and we know that huge amounts of salmon are, you know, they're just not, well, they're discarded and destroyed, and that I think speaks to the fact that the stocking densities are so high and parasites are eating these poor creatures alive. And the thing about this is a booming global industry. Let's not suggest for a second that we're looking at people who are on really narrow margins. You know, the demand for this, the demand for salmon is massive. So I would ask them to get their act together. They want it to be seen as a high quality product that you'd like to think they'd have some pride in treating the salmon with great care. And that, you know, goes from the beginning of their lives to the very end. And, you know, the question was in particular about, you know, at the final moments of life and at the time of killing, and that should be absolutely as humane as possible. But I certainly, you know, at the moment, there is no way we should be considering expanding this industry given the current situation in which it finds itself.
Thank you very much. And could I ask for your thoughts on that, please, Maurice Golden?
Thanks. I mean, my view is broadly the same as the Rural Affairs Committee, which produced a report on salmon farming in 2018. They said that urgent and meaningful action needed to be taken to address regulatory deficiencies as well as fish health and environmental issues before the industry can expand. They highlighted issues around waste collection, discharge of medicines and chemicals into the environment, seal killing, and the mixing of wild and farm salmon as key concerns. They also felt a moratorium shouldn't be put in place due to insufficient evidence. So that would be my approach. I think there's a challenge around the regulatory gaps that still exist, given what we're hearing. That must be filled, and we also need to ensure that the precautionary principle is applied in our approach to the salmon farming industry as well.
Thank you very much. And a final word from yourself, Colin Smyth, please.
Thanks very much, Kirsten. There are also two, I think, really important issues raised there. The first is obviously around legal protection for decapod crustaceans and cephalopods. During the stage 2 of the animal welfare, animal wildlife bill, I lodged a number of amendments to actually do that, to extend that particular legal protection. And the government gave a commitment at that time to, once the DEFRA review is considered to some of the scientific evidence which is forthcoming, then that issue will be looked at again, and included by the new Animal Welfare Commission. So this is a subject that we will be coming back to in the next Parliament. I think it's really important to do that on an evidence-based basis, but we did see at least a commitment that would happen, and certainly that's something we would pursue in the Labour Party. The second issue is obviously around salmon farming specifically. I was on the Rural Economy and Connectivity Committee that carried out the investigation into salmon farming, and I have to say some of the practices that we consider were quite appalling. I think Maurice mentioned the fact that the committee basically said that there shouldn't be a moratorium. Well, I dissented from that view on the grounds that if there was not progress made, then we should be revisiting whether or not there needs to be a moratorium. And so far, we've failed to see progress being made, and it's simply not good enough. I think there's been a lack of political will at the heart of government to pursue some of these issues. The reality is we've got a sector that's expanded quicker than the regulation has kept up with, and there's a significant amount of action that still needs to be pursued. And certainly the commitment from the Rural Economy Committee at the end of the last session was that this is a subject they'll come back to, and we absolutely have to.
Thank you very much for all your responses, and that certainly is a very current debated issue. And I think I've got time to sneak in one. I don't know if I've got time to sneak in two. There's so many questions here. So I will move on to fox hunting. And very brief, do you agree, which parties agree that we should have a real ban on fox hunting in Scotland? And I'll come to Molly Nolan first, please.
Yes, thank you. I mean, obviously there has been progress made in terms of fox hunting, but we would support an outright ban coming forward.
Thank you very much. And Alison, Johnson, your thoughts?
Yes, I proposed a bill in the last session of the Scottish Parliament. I'm pleased that some of that has been progressed with the mountain hare protection that's come in now, but we still have to continue to work to ensure there is a real ban on fox hunting in Scotland. There are so many loopholes in the legislation that the Parliament passed in 2002 that it's just easy to get round them. So certainly that's in our manifesto, and I'll be working as hard as I can to make sure we see change in this next session of the Parliament.
Thank you very much. And Colin, your thoughts on banning fox hunting?
I absolutely fully support a ban, and it'll be a commitment in Labour's manifesto published next week. It is unfinished business from the bill in 2002. That bill set out to ban hunting. There are people, frankly, that do not adhere to the spirit of that bill, and indeed, for that matter, the legislation itself. And we need to close those loopholes to make sure that can't continue. And that certainly should be an early commitment, I think, within the new Parliament. There were plans to bring that forward in the previous Parliament. That was obviously shelved, so it is unfinished business. It does need to be finished.
Thank you very much. And your thoughts on fox hunting, please, Ben Macpherson.
Thanks. Yeah, I would just emphasise that it wasn't shelved. It was just paused because of COVID and the need to reallocate resources to other priorities because of the pandemic. As I have stated in Parliament a number of times, and as did my predecessor, Marie Goujon, we remain committed to closing the loopholes and to what she stated to Parliament back in 2019. And you will see that in our manifesto published today, we say that we will legislate to close loopholes in the law protecting foxes and other wild animals. So we will close those loopholes to protect foxes and other wild animals, and we are committed to that and have been for some time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And finally, Maurice Golden, please.
Hi, I think that, the short answer would be no. There's something like 14 hunts in the whole of Scotland. Anywhere I've lived in my life, I'll never have been in a local authority area that's had a hunt. I think that if there's specific issues with the 14 hunts, then I think they're very easy to deal with. We had Lord Bonamy did a report, an evidence-based report, and made recommendations which were implemented. And I think that on this subject, like others, we have to take an evidence-based approach. The other point I would make on fox hunting, given all the other animal welfare issues we've discussed tonight, I do not think it should be a legislative priority for anyone until, even if you support a ban, until we've done all the far bigger, more pertinent issues than targeting 14 hunting people in Scotland.
Thank you very much. We picked a topic to have one of a heated debate at the very end on then. I'm so sorry, I cannot believe it's 18:27. Where has the time gone? We had over 60 questions and I think we managed to get through 10. So that was not a bad effort in a short space of time. I can't thank you all enough, and for everyone for joining us, and the range of topics, from companion to well to farm to kind of generic animal welfare. It's great to see such commitment to animal welfare in Scotland. And as I said at the beginning, we've made lots of progress, and there's so much more that we can achieve together in the next Scottish Parliament. So I will thank you all very, very much for your contributions and hand back over to Bob.
Thank you very much, Kirstine. And that was thoroughly enjoyable session. There was quite a lot of agreement, I think, across the parties on some subjects, and perhaps not so much agreement on others, but that's to be expected. And I think I think we've agreed that sentience really matters, and that that needs to be progressed in the next parliamentary session. Scotland should and could be a leader in animal welfare topics, and building animal welfare in right at the beginning of lots of the work that we're going to be doing all together in coalitions or collaborations as we go forward. So it just remains for me to thank Kirsty so much for keeping this one on the rails, keeping it going.
I don't know if I did that, but thank you.
Phenomenal amount of questions coming in, and thank you to everybody who booked in tonight, just under 200 at one point watching on Zoom. So thank you very much for attending, everybody, and have a great evening.